back to Big Balls Fantasy Football. We have Cash with us here tonight, back on Skype to give everyone his gambles of the week. I know you haven't gotten his gambles in a few weeks, so I know he has some good ones. He is calling all the way in from Texas. So what's going on, Cash? Hey, Cash.
Guys, great to see you, and thank you for having me back on Big Balls Fantasy Football. And it's going to week 8, and morning of Bears loss, but I'm hanging in there.
Yeah, we talked about the Bears earlier. It hasn't been good this week. We have a lot of problems. We'll get to that in a moment. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Dallas, how the Cowboys been there and how the Cowboy fans been there since you're right in their backyard?
Sure. There's lately been a little bit of a buzz, negative and positive after the big Denver game a couple weeks ago. But they surprisingly have done well. I mean, most national publications have them between 18 and 20. And there are those today who would rank them in the top 10 this week after the impressive victory last week against the high-flying Eagles. And let me tell you, the way they're doing it, they have an opportunistic defense. It's not as bad as their numbers. They have a +4 turnover ratio. Tony Romo, QBR is about 101. We've got 5 picks and 265 attempts. And let's not forget the contributions of the beast, Des Bryant, who's had 42 catches and 6 touchdowns, as well as a new up-and-comer rookie, Terrence Williams, out of Baylor, who's had 24 catches out of 28 targets, leading to 3 touchdowns and offsetting the loss a little bit of less than healthy Miles Austin. And the offense is third in the league at scoring at about 28.6, only the Broncos and the Bears. Yes, the Bears.
Cash knows a whole lot about Dallas for being a Bear fan, but I understand they're in your backyard. So why don't you give us your gambles this week and get our fans some good picks?
That sounds great. Yes, absolutely. This is really cash time, and there's with all the injuries that have been hitting the NFL, some of the studs lately, there's definitely times you want to focus on the waiver wire and pick up some good players out there. Number 1 on the radar, Mike James of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He's had he had about 14 touches last week after Doug Martin went down, and he's a former Hurricane who runs and catches the ball pretty well, as he did in last week's game. And he'll have rookie Mike Glennon, the quarterback, who has been relatively smooth for a rookie, and he's running the offense pretty well and finding Vincent Jackson and Mike Williams. So trying to get a more of a balanced offense in Tampa Bay. They're still looking for their first win, but I think he'd be somebody that if you're looking for a running back, he might be the one. Borek, what do you think?
Don't talk to me about Doug Martin. I already named him my bust of the year. Sorry, Jenilee. I know you have a slight connection.
Well, I know when Martin went down, I was thinking, who in the world is their backup? I didn't even know. So, I like the pick. I like the gamble, and they got to get somebody in there. So I think it's great. He's definitely going to be on every single waiver wire.
There's a rule in fantasy. If he's a starting running back, you start him over a backup. You start him over like Ben Tate, except Ben Tate this week will be starting. Anyway, maybe, possibly. Give us your second one, Cash.
Well, the second one is definitely an up-and-comer, and he made life pretty difficult for my Chicago Bears, our Chicago Bears. Jordan Reed of the Redskins, the tight end. And, he's has had a pretty good start to the season. He's making Fred Davis expendable. But, he had so far in the season, he's had about 26 catches, but doesn't sound like a lot. But that's only with 30 targets. So this guy's pretty sure-handed. It pretty much catches everything thrown its way. Projections are for the whole season. I think he'll catch somewhere between 65 to 70 balls, and with about 6 TDs. Another thing to keep in mind about Jordan Reed is, he had 9 catches for 134 yards and a TD last week, of course. Again, that was because of a depleted Chicago defense, but still pretty impressive. And his, numbers I believe will be higher because, as you recall, RG3 had a slower start due to his health, so it was a little bit shaky the first 2-3 games. And now that RG3 got his confidence back, the whole Washington offense seems re-energized. Jordan Reed is 6'2", 243 pounds, and Lance Briggs of the Chicago Bears compared him to Jeremiah Finley. Jenilee, what do you think of Jordan?
Well, I like the pick. I watched him, obviously watching in our Bears game, and I kept thinking, who is this guy? Mm-hmm. It's not Fred Davis. Who the heck is this guy who's catching everything? And we weren't able to stop him. And then, like you mentioned, RG3 is looking like he's getting more confident in his knee and a lot more back to form. So, yeah, he's a good one.
He didn't have a preseason, so now he's finding his targets finally and figuring out who he can trust. So I like that pick too.
Who's your third one?
Well, the third one is a big reach, and yes, it's a major gamble. But if you are desperate for some running back help, you may want to bank on Peyton. No, not Peyton Manning, but Peyton Hillis of the Giants, who just was actually teaching in high school just last week, volunteering, I believe, and got a call to rush to the Giants because of the opening, and not only got in and learned from the playbook, but got into the game, had 18 rushes and 36 yards. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot, but again, this is the Giants of team, and he did have a touchdown. But the other thing is he also had 45 yards. And, granted, it's the Vikings defense, but it made him look, look like a pretty much big stud out there. Now, keep in mind that, Peyton Hillis, he had a very successful campaign in 2010. And, he's not an oldie or anything. He was on the cover of Madden 2011, but a rash of injuries and with the Cleveland Browns. So this could be his way back to the NFL. And for the next 2-3 weeks, you might want to keep him around. And he's but one thing to remember, which I think will make him really successful, he was born 6 days after the Bears won the Super Bowl 20. Right, Jenilee, what do you think? What do you think of it?
I'm more impressed by your trivia there, pulling that one out of your butt. Unfortunately, I have to call you out on it being Madden 12 that Peyton Hillis was on the front of.
Thank you, that's correct.
But, Peyton Hillis, strangely enough, here's another piece of weird trivia. My boss at my day job that I work at, her name is Terry Hillis. It's her cousin.
Oh,
and, yes.
Weird.
Very weird. And she had picked him number 1 2 seasons ago when he had a hot season, and we all know where he's gone. And, yeah, he came in. He got a touchdown on Monday Night Football. First game out. He's got the hot hand. He's a gamble, but, you got to be gutsy. Again, another starting running back.
Yeah. Now, my question about him, though, is he going to go away when Brandon Jacobs comes back?
Right.
That'll be interesting to see what they do with that. But definitely, I think Brandon Jacobs is iffy for this week especially. I don't think he's going to play. So if you need someone this week, there's 6 teams on a bye, which is a huge bye week. So.
Yeah. And we all know Mr. Coughlin always likes to stick with the hot hand. David Wilson. Speaking of which...
And when you're 0-6...
Yeah.
Well, you can use whatever hot hands you can.
Now 1-6 for crying out loud. Thank you, Vikings. But I just gave you the lead in there, I think, to your
that's right.
bust.
1-6, but it feels like 0-1,
Right. But I think I just gave you the lead in on your bust there by mentioning Mr. Wilson.
Yeah, David Wilson will be my pick for the bust of the season. Really, he's pretty much laid a gold, a dud, an egg, and I had him on one of my fantasy leagues, and I remember seeing it's 1.3 points and things like that. He's had a lot of, from blocking issues to fumbling issues, and just hasn't remained healthy. So it's been a bunch of, number of factors. And this guy was rated as high as, maybe 7th or 8th by some national analyst.
By us. We picked him. We picked him in the preseason to be all hot.
Well, Greg picked him.
I picked him. Now she's just going to blame me. I love it. But yeah, I picked him. Starting running back. Didn't think he'd have the dropsies. Didn't think he'd have the blocking problems. Guess what? I was wrong.
Well, he went in the first and second rounds of most drafts, depending on how deep the league was. So it's not, no one really saw this coming, that he was going to be that much of a bust. Yeah. So, Cash, what do you think about the Bears going forward? What do you think the rest of our season is going to look like?
Sure, yeah. It's very interesting. At the beginning of the season, and I didn't want to say it because I didn't want to speak out loud and having come true, but I looked at the roster and asked myself, who are the Bears could not afford to lose for any length of time in 2014? Matt Forte, Brandon Marshall, Charles Tillman, Julius Peppers, all good possibilities. But the one player I felt, for a number of reasons, they couldn't do without is Jay Cutler. Now, my answer is a little bit different than probably what most fans would give, or the reasons being. It's not because of Cutler's leadership skills, physical talents, or mental toughness that he brings to the table. Those are all valuable traits. But because this is a contract year for Jay, in order to truly evaluate him and make a commitment to him for the next, say, 5 years to 10 years even, as a GM, one would want to see how far he's progressed and matured, especially under the tutelage of Mark Trestman and Matt Cavanaugh, and whether he, can resist temptation to go to Brandon Marshall every other down and consider options 2 and 3 on a given play, and make better decisions, especially in the red zone behind a capable offensive line. And we started to see a lot of positive things happening this year. So it is really unfortunate, and it was devastating to me when I saw him limp off in D.C. And not sure only what this means for 2014, but also where there will be a Cutler and Bears marriage for the next few years even. However, bear with me. In the past 48 hours, it's occurred to me that this scenario may work out for the best, and here's why. Mark Trestman is supposed to be an offensive genius, and that will, be his test. What better way to test him than be without your franchise quarterback? And football fans, hey, they don't often want to be, without your, going with your backup QB. But if it's going to happen, it might as well happen during the regular season. And not in the championship game where you would have to send out Caleb Haney. Josh McCown had and utilized all his offensive weapons, passing the ball, running with the ball, while nearly pulling out a win in hustle territory. Let's see what he can do after the bye week. Can he keep the team above 500 until Cutler returns? And a couple more. How well is our offensive line maturing in run blocking, as the assumption is the Bears will run more with Cutler out? And lastly, Jay will not have to face Dominican Sue when the Lions come to town in, I believe it's week 10.
I think those are all really good points, Cash. I definitely don't know what they're going to do about Cutler. I mean, at this point, he has shown that he's injury prone.
Right.
Which is a problem for a quarterback. He's hurt every single year, and this was the one year that he had the offensive line and shouldn't have gotten hurt.
And still gets hurt.
And he still got hurt. And so I don't know if you offer him that huge, big money contract or if you look for somebody in the draft or, I don't know what their decision-making process will be, but this injury is not helping him because even though he was playing a lot better, he still wasn't playing like a Drew Brees or like a Peyton Manning. And if he had done that, I think they would say, okay, screw the injury, we're going to sign him. But I don't know if it was good enough for him to get that contract.
Well, and I also think you have to look at the fact of how Josh will do. The next few weeks are really going to tell. Is it our offensive line that's awesome, or is it Jay Cutler that was awesome? And if Josh can somehow pull this off, he might be able to get himself a damn starting job as on his little journeyman run that he's been with us, and might actually get himself established, because you have to remember the last time he played, we had a horrible line, and he was running for his life just like Jay was. So we saw in the game, he almost brought us back in that damn game. If it wasn't for the refs of the NFL, thank you very much for making a bunch of BS calls, you know, we might have actually pulled that thing off.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I'm actually very curious on how the season plays out and how it concludes, and I almost want to fast forward to that, because I want to see if it makes more sense to perhaps franchise Jay and even draft a quarterback, you know, in the next draft, which is probably going to be pretty strong class with guys like McCarron and Teddy Bridgewater and Johnny Manziel and others.
Yeah.
So what is your prediction for the Bears' record with everything that has happened in the last week?
Well, you know, it's forecasted that he's going to be out for at least 4 weeks, and one of them being a bye week. That's 3 games. My guess is he's going to be out at least one more game. It would not surprise me if he, you know, it depends how Josh is playing, and if the Bears are you know, at least 500 during, you know, at least or 2-1 while Jay's out, or maybe, you know, 3-2 somewhere there. I think if he progresses well, he heals well, I think he'll be back at the very latest by the Cowboys and Bears games on Monday night.
Cool. Well, thanks a lot for your gambles. We really appreciate you giving them as usual. You're going to have some different gambles for us on the podcast tomorrow night at blogtalkradio.com/bigballsfootball. Also, you can, of course, look for us on our website, bigballsfantasyfootball.com. That'll take you to our Facebook page and our Twitter that Jenilee is going to tell you about.
Yes, our Facebook page is facebook.com/bigballsfantasyfootball. You can like us on there. We're always updating it. And Twitter is at bigballsfball. So go ahead and tweet us. Sorry we had one of our signs fall, but
we got
I
photo
mentioned that.
We got photo bomb last week. We got sign bomb this week. We don't let anything
It
stop
happens.
us here at Big Balls Fantasy Football. Thanks again, Cash, and everybody. Good luck in Week 8. Good night.
Good night.
Thanks. Good night. Just like players, their signs are dropping like flies. Good night, guys.